I did have somebody ask me to go through like a step-by-step of what I've done to kind of create my grow space. I don't really know how in-depth I can get into that, just because like it's done for the most part. But the first thing I did out here in the garage was I insulated and I put up drywall. This used to just be beams and nothing, just a wall. So filled that with insulation, put a sheet of plastic in there as a vapor barrier, and then drywalled over it, mudded it, painted it. Did that, helped prevent drafts. And then I went around the windows and I sealed those up extra tight too. Again, just trying to prevent drafts. I'm just trying to keep the cold air from coming in. There's also a big gaping hole in my attic where things get lowered in and put back up for the holidays and whatnot. I have a bubble thing up there. It kind of looks like a ceiling hemorrhoid, but it's a thing made for attic ceilings. It's like $20. It helps hold the draft, keep the cold air up in the attic. It works really well. I do still need to drywall and insulate this wall, this exterior wall with the doors on it. I think I'll probably try and do that this winter. I just hadn't gotten around to it, so that's the only reason I haven't done it yet. But when I do that, I'm just going to get some insulation and stuff it in between the beams, put a vapor barrier in there, just plastic sheeting, staple gun that in, and drywall over it and mud the seams of the drywall. I probably won't paint this side. There are kits made you can put on your garage doors to help keep the draft out. These are actually fairly well insulated, but the stuff that they use for that insulation is just like this foil bubble wrap. It's really all that is. I do use a lot of this foil insulation stuff. Insulation. It's not really insulation. It's more of a radiant barrier. You can see I have also put that up here on the ceiling. I need to go through and tape up some edges where it's come loose over the years. But what that does is it helps keep the cold from the attic coming on down, because there's no insulation on the floor of the attic. Having insulation up there would help too, but I'd have to take everything out of the attic to do that. And well, you haven't seen my attic. That's not. I don't. That would be a big chore. But yeah, like I was saying, so that's not really insulation. It's just kind of. It's almost like styrofoam, in a sense. So it'll help keep the cold from sinking in, and the heat and whatnot during the summertime. That's what it's useful for. It's fairly inexpensive, though I think kind of overpriced, but it's been a few years. Maybe the price has come down. I'm not sure. And then again, along those lines, the ground is a mess right now. I've been moving plants around, but this will all be cleaned and I sanitize it. I'll get to that. This is the Polypro EPS insulation foam board. It's styrofoam, essentially, with a coating of mylar on one side. I use this because, well, out here, over here I can show you, it's a normal garage floor. It's just cement. And it gets extremely cold during the winter time. So having this here just kind of creates a barrier between that cold concrete, the cold cement, I know those are different things, and the bottom of the pots that are sitting on top of them. Works really well. It keeps that cold from transferring, especially with the ceramic pottery that can get really cold sitting on there. So that's all that is. It just helps keep the pots at whatever the air temperature is as opposed to the ground temperature. And again, relatively cheap, at least for the ones I've purchased. I have four 4x8s, and then a couple spares that I'll be putting in over and around there. And that's essentially it when it comes to insulating the ground walls and ceilings. The next thing is the plastic. So starting from one end of the garage, and this is just how I've done it, by the way. There are better ways to do it. I'll talk about that after I explain it. So this is plastic sheeting. I have multiple layers. It's 10 milliliter plastic on each side, 10 millimeter plastic, and then I have a 15 or 20, a really heavy gauge plastic that goes around the other side that's actually made for greenhouses. This is just made for like painting and whatnot. Get it from like Lowe's or Home Depot. But anyways, I put that up from the ceiling. I have a chain up here, and what I've done is I've put duct tape in the spots where I needed to poke holes through to hook it to the chain. That keeps the plastic from continuing to tear. And that's worked fairly well. Now, it's fallen down. One of the finishing touches out here when the plants are in is I will go through with a ladder, lift it back up, and duct tape it up so that it's more airtight. Not completely airtight, 'cause I'm not trying to suffocate myself, obviously, but somewhat airtight. I want it to be up and flush against the ceiling. And I've put doors on here. These are little zipper doors. You cut a slit in the plastic, they go on each side. I have a zipper door here. Then I come around this corner. This is the two-sided. There's two pieces of plastic on this wall right here to another zipper door. That door is going to allow me when I walk into my garage to unzip and come in this way so that I can access the filters. Then I have another one that unzips from over here. so I can get in through all sides. I've widened this so I have a better path to get through once the plants are in. And this will all make more sense when the plants are in here too. And so it's along this wall from basically that window over here, then through partially up that way. That's where the heavy greenhouse plastic is. So there's 3 layers of plastic on this side, and that's because this is where the garage door is, this side right here. So there's more cold right here, and the garage door is open and the cold gets in, and that's what that's about. I would like to wrap the whole thing in a 4th layer of plastic this year, but I don't know if I will, because that really probably isn't necessary. But it ended up working so well that I wouldn't mind, you know, amping it up a little bit. So the reason for the plastic, though, that is here because it is something I've realized over the years, impractical to heat this entire garage. And unnecessary. I don't have the plants in the entire garage. That's not the purpose of the garage. So I'm heating the space instead of the entire area. It's too expensive otherwise. I could get, what is it, a 210, 220, 240 volt, like the heavy duty breakers put in, so like the thing you plug a washer and dryer into, and put in an industrial greenhouse electric heater. I can't have gas. We're not zoned for that. Can't have a gas heater unless it's like hardwired, hard plumbed, hard gas lined, and it would cost a fortune. And so putting in a new breaker box, that would cost a fortune too. So by doing things this way, I can just run a couple of space heaters, usually one at a time, and that keeps the space warm enough, except for when it dips down below like 15 or 10 degrees Fahrenheit outdoors. Then I usually need a little bit more help, and I'll switch the other heaters on. Okay, the water. This is probably unnecessary for most people. This is just because I love my fish, and it works out well for me to have the supply of water that I can treat and have it good for my fish without having to run a water line out here all the time. It also helps keep the humidity up. And water takes in the heat, so if it's nice and toasty in here, it's going to hold on to that heat for a while. So if I can heat it up to 80 degrees in here one day, and maybe it's 30 degrees outside, but then the next day it drops to 10 degrees outside, this is going to slow the temperature from dropping a little bit. It'll release some of that warmth that's in there while it slowly cools down, and hopefully just kind of break down the amount of time I need between switching the heaters on and off. I also like having this in here because it gives you an idea of how much water I'm using. I know how much water is in here. I can see the water line raise and lower as I'm watering the plants, so I can be a little bit more economical, environmentally conscious and whatnot when I'm using this. But again, this is more of a me thing. I think this would probably not something most people would put in their garage, because they do sell humidifiers. I've tried quite a few. None of them have been quite heavy duty enough to really humidify this entire area, but if I were to buy more of them, it would be fine, or to get an industrial one, but I don't. Those put out a lot of like misty, steamy stuff. It's not steam, it's mist, it's ultrasonic vapor. And I can't, there's electronics everywhere. That's not going to work either. So this is working okay. The air gets really dry here, but I do think with an extra layer of plastic this year, I'm going to keep things warm enough that this will release more moisture than it was releasing last year. Lighting. Okay, that's like one of the most complicated things when it comes to plants. I'm using all Par 38 LEDs. I have one CFL that's compact fluorescent back there that I'm actually going to be doing away with this year. It uses too much electricity. You have to change the bulbs every year, and it would be cheaper for me to put an LED fixture over there than to change the bulb every single year for the next few years. So I'm going to be switching that over. The LEDs need to be Par 38 because they have the highest penetration. I don't know how to explain it. The light reaches the furthest distance. Lights need to be a certain distance from your plants in order for them to be effective. Like the Vandas being down here, they're not really getting much benefit from the lights, but I have them down here because they were starting to scorch a little bit. They weren't used to the intensity of these new LEDs. Nothing wrong with shop lights. Get some shop lights. Shop lights work great. You can put fluorescent tubes in them. I mean, get one with fluorescent tubes unless you find an LED that has a light spectrum that's good for plants. This right here is 5500K, which isn't the best for plants, to be honest, but I used one last year. I just kind of experimented with it. I had it hung up here in this shelf, and I had some plants down here, and they actually did really, really well. I had, I think it was an Echeveria. What was it? I want to say it was like Echeveria Lola, I think. Echeveria, that was just a shot of spray paint. I'm so sorry. It was Echeveria Lola that was here that still took off a little bit, but everything else did fine. So I went ahead and I got a few more of these so I can hang them up the bottom of these shelves here. They use a lot less electricity, being LED. Over here is where my Adonidia palms are going to go, so I'm hopeful that there's a beam up there in the ceiling right above them, so I can put some eye hooks in and put a light fixture up there, because those were some plants I had last year that really needed just a little bit more light. I had trouble getting them direct light because there's this big open space here. So that's the end of that story. Oh, and I do believe that this radiant barrier, this bubble wrap material, does come in white now. The only reason I mention that is because I know you see the reflectiveness. A lot of people see that and think, oh, that's going to increase your light. It's not really the case. White reflects some more than does this reflective material. Now, if you have a spotlight straight on it, it's going to bounce back more. But with white, it illuminates a broader area, is what I'm trying to say. I'm not going to take it down and replace it with white, but if this were something you were buying, if you can find it in white, that might be better. Had white been available when I was doing this, then that's what I would be using. And I can see there's a space up here I need to repatch and fill. I had to move some things around because I actually shifted everything over this year so I'd have more space on this side of the grow area this year. So that's what that whole story is about. So hopefully I'll have more room between the Areca palms, the orchid stands, and I'll have a path here, because last year I could barely get through here. I mean, I could, but I had branches and stuff on me. I didn't like always having the plants poking me. Outdoors, that doesn't bother me. Indoors, I don't like it. I don't know why. I always feel like there's bugs on everything, but there's more likely bugs on them outside. This is not soap. This is actually water and peppermint oil. I fill this whole thing up with hot water, and there's probably 3 to 4 tablespoons, which is a hefty amount of peppermint oil. And I use this, I spray it in all the nooks and crannies up around the windows, and that actually, it kills the spiders. Because I have a problem out here with cellar spiders, so I'm spraying fairly frequently, because, man, those things are invasive. They're not bad to have, but I don't need, hundreds of thousands of them. That's unnecessary. If they ate mealybugs, I'd be feeding them, and I'd be trying to breed the dang things. Okay, but I think that's it. I mean, obviously there are a lot of improvements I could make, but this is just kind of how I've done things over the year in the cheapest fashion possible. It's just plastic and styrofoam. Insulating and drywalling the garage obviously wasn't very cheap, but it kind of needed to be done anyways. It just makes the garage look better. And had to pay attention to codes too. Like this wall, had to make sure to use the special fire retardant insulation because this wall actually touches the house. There were things that had to pay attention to. I learned a lot. It was a good experience. I have been trying to find LED tube lights that are actually made for growing plants. They exist, kind of, but at the same time, not really. I find something that seems promising that I read about, and it's not the right wattage, or they're just kind of cheap and overpriced. So, like I said, I did use this last year, and it worked pretty well, but I would like for it to be a spectrum that's more fitting to the plants. But for now, this will do. There's tons and tons and tons of LED fixtures out there for growing plants, but not a ton that actually fit into the shop lights that I purchased, unfortunately. I've actually had some people reaching out to me asking me to review some lights, but they weren't lights that I was like, I don't think I would necessarily buy these anyway, so I don't know. Let me know. They're cheap. That's all I'm trying to say. $25, $30 lights. Obviously, they're sending them to me for basically free. You want me to go over those lights, then I'd be happy to, but there's a little bit more to them when they're a lower wattage. I mean, they're 50 watts, but they have 250 diodes in them, so it's not strong light. Do you know what I mean? Let me know about that. I, for some reason, didn't film an outro here. I was just okay, I'll just stop talking now. No, that's not really how things work. There was one other thing I wanted to mention, though, and that is that when I painted these walls, I used a paint that was made to be water repellent and tight, and it was another reason that I sealed these windows, was to protect from vapor, because it does get kind of humid in here, and when I water, things splash, so it's a high gloss paint also on top of that, just so that the water can beat off and repel and not soak in. It took a lot of paint. Many coats went into this to make sure that there's no water damage. Okay, that's, I think, everything. I think I typed it out in the video, but I just wanted to also mention one of the reasons I use this in here as a floor, not only because it's cheap, but I can sterilize this very easily, because occasionally throughout the winter time when I have the plants in here, I do come in here and I try and sanitize it, brush it clean every so often, because people walk around. Sometimes I let the dogs out here and plants get moved around, and everything is in very, very, very close quarters, and that's how disease spreads. So and pests. So that's another reason I like this. This Mylar finish on it makes it nice and slick. It's non-porous. I can clean it very, very easily. Okay, that's all. Next part of this vlog, not actually in this video, but the next of the series. I said it was going to be a 3-part. It's actually going to be 4. So this is the 3rd right here, is moving the plants in. I'm going to move the plants in. So that'll be happening soon, and things will start to make more sense. And once the plants are in, I'll be doing the final details, like getting that up. I'm going to work on some lighting. I'm going to be working on these tables and all that fun stuff. So yeah, next part. Plants are coming in. I hope everybody's doing well. Don't forget to leave the video a thumbs up. Makes a huge difference to the channel and for everything I'm doing. I appreciate it. Thank you. And subscribe as well. Upload multiple times a week and hit that notification bell. That way you know when new videos come out. And yeah, like I said, this is a multi-part thing. So next video, plant things will be happening. And I'm excited about it. But all right, as always, everybody. And of course, most importantly, keep on growing. Bye-bye.